Dynasty Podcast. We are episode 21, and we are not previewing an MLB team this week. We are finally getting onto our preview shows once again. We took 2 weeks off for it, and it's definitely a good thing we did because nothing really happened interesting in hockey over the last couple weeks. We knew the playoffs were pretty much set, and I have Chris joining me tonight, and we will have a special guest later on in this podcast as well when it comes to the prediction time. So, obviously, NHL playoffs are coming up. Are you excited for it, Chris?
Yeah, I am definitely excited for it. This is my first playoffs of the 2019-2020 season because I missed both football and baseball. And I'm excited where my team's at this point. I honestly think this is probably my best shot at winning a championship in this season. So, I'm excited for it and ready for it. It's been far too long since we've had a hockey playoff.
I agree with you there, and I would consider, the way I do it at least, is since we're playing the championship in 2020, this would be the first one for 2020. Obviously, 2019 was not a great end for you, but you have a good chance in hockey, and we had a crazy deadline, and it led up to this. And while most of these matchups over the last 2 weeks really didn't matter, we do have one that is in progress still. Obviously, all of them are in progress, but there's an 8.5 point difference between the Preds and the Anaheim Mighty Ducks. And when you and I last talked, Chris, we said that the Ducks didn't seem like they would lose this matchup. I had a better chance of losing to the Kings in any of the weeks, or even to Colorado. But the Ducks are currently behind, and do you think they're going to be able to hold on to a lead or gain a lead back at this point since they trail the Preds by 8.5 points?
Yeah, right now it's 310.5 to 301. I don't think the Ducks will have a chance of coming back. I just we talked about this earlier, that they don't really have anybody that's all that great. I don't know if great's the word for it, but they don't have anybody that's a star necessarily, a superstar playing in their last 8 players. And neither does Nashville, but they still hold an 8.5 point lead. And I think it's going to be pretty hard for the Ducks to get a lead back.
Right. Well, why don't we bring on our guest, my son Charles, who wanted to join us tonight. Do you think the Ducks will be able to overcome their 9 point difference right now, or do you think they'll be able to come back and win?
Come back and win.
You think the Ducks Jared will be able to come back and win? Well, we'll have to see. And neither team is without their blemishes this week because Nashville did leave 9 points on the bench in Evander Kane on Thursday, which was a full day. It's not like he forgot to set his lineup, but obviously 9 points is a tough leave. Even when you're leading in this close of a matchup, it's always good to have every single point. And then Anaheim did leave Quinn Hughes on IR during the week, which cost them 2.9 points. And then Thatcher Demko earned 7 points as a goalie on Friday on his bench, since all 3 of his goalies had games that night. And it really hurt him to leave Demko when his other starting goalie didn't actually play that night. So, both teams, we'd really be in the same position as we are right now had they both put both of those in. But knowing that there were these little blemishes makes this matchup all that much more interesting. And we'll have to wait and see at the end of the night what exactly happens.
Yeah, you would normally think that an 8 point lead or an 8 point difference, leaving it on the bench, isn't that big of a deal. But when these two look back tomorrow, and particularly Jared, if he loses 8 points, if he sees that on the bench, that's going to be a big deal. Even though it is a tie that they both left about 8 points on the bench, it's a big deal when you are on the losing side of that. And if you only lose by 6 points, you're like, oh, I've left that 8 points on the bench. I've been in that position before. Actually, I was in that position versus Jared a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, especially when you lose by half a point or a full point. It sucks when you have the close matchups and you end up losing and you look back and you could have changed it. Especially when you have this much on the line.
This is just
it's really not it's not a lot, but it is at the same time because the Mighty Ducks, no matter what happens tonight, they will have a bye for next week. They'll be able to sit comfortably throughout the first round of the playoffs. But if they do lose tonight, I will obviously win against Colorado. And if I win and Jared loses, that would give me the number 1 seed, and Jared would fall to the number 2, but he can't fall any lower than that. So currently he's in a bye week, but when it comes to matchups, that's going to be the difference in the playoffs with this seeding.
And then
so
I would also
go
ahead. I was excited. We were talking about it earlier. We were talking about the Avalanche. They did miss 2 days, full days of setting their lineup. And we were talking about it, and we said that it wasn't that big of a deal. But honestly, I could see it being. I think it's a bigger deal. It could end up being a bigger deal to them than we actually originally, or at least I would have originally thought, because that's going to matter of who they play in the second round. Because obviously, I don't want to get too ahead of myself or too ahead of us, but if they win this first round of playoffs, that's going to make a difference of who they play. They would end up going against you instead of Jared, I think. So it does. It is a big deal that he did not set his lineup those 2 days. I think the way I was looking at it, I'm pretty sure he probably would have won if he had set his lineup those 2 days.
I mean, I don't know if I'd go that far. I haven't checked his team really, so I don't know if he would have been able to make up almost 80 points. But
but it would have been close.
It would have been closer, but he's going to sit in the 3 seed no matter what, and it all depends on what happens between the number 1 and the number 2. But then we get down to, like you said, the Avalanche. He holds the tiebreaker over you, even if you guys do have the same record. So, and you sit in the number 4 seed, and then we have the Nashville Predators, who, if they lose, they will be 12-9. If they win, they will be 13-8. They weren't moving out of the number 5 spot. And then you have the Minnesota Wild, who are going to lose this week to you.
Yeah.
At 8-13, making the playoffs. Obviously, the first NFL playoffs we had, they made the playoffs as the number 6 seed and did kind of the same thing. But, I mean, the playoffs are set between 3, 4, 5, and 6. And so in week 1, or round 1 of the playoffs, we're going to have the Wild facing the Avalanche. And it feels like a decently far drop for the Avalanche, just because the road gets a little bit harder compared to 2019 for the 2019 championship, since they'll have to face either myself or Jared in round 2, and they obviously have the extra week to play, putting them at risk.
Yeah.
Which I don't think it's that much of a risk against Minnesota. Do you?
No, I don't. Maybe if right now I haven't looked at I have not looked at who the Wild have as far as IR to see if anybody's coming back, and I don't think they are. But as it stands, as this team stands right now, I don't think he has a realistic chance against the Avalanche. I don't see a difference maker on the Minnesota Wild, and he was trying to trade off anyway to try to get an NFL championship, which I understand. Don't get me wrong, but I just don't see that difference maker on the Wild that's gonna give them an edge. So I'm gonna take the Avalanche, and I would say I would take it with about 99% confidence.
I agree. I think the Wild do have a non-zero chance to win. I mean, obviously they can play the wire. They could grab extra starts if they wanted, if they have players they feel comfortable dropping, I should say, at this point. But it does look to be the Avalanche's game in round 1. What do you think, Charles? Do you think the Avalanche or the Wild are going to win?
Avalanche.
Do you think the Avalanche think Colorado takes it in their Mile High Stadium? It's not going to be too much of a surprise if they do. So obviously we're all on the Avalanche bandwagon in round 1. But why don't we go to your matchup, Chris? Because this is a much tougher matchup between the two teams. Obviously it's I wouldn't say middling teams, but it's the middle of the playoff pack between your Golden Knights, who will host the Nashville Predators over in Vegas. And you're looking to get out of the second round for the first time. Last year obviously didn't play out the way you wanted it to, with the fact that you lost in round 1 and then should have been in round 2, honestly, with the way that Carolina played. So
Yeah.
I'll let you kind of talk about this one. Are you nervous to play Nashville with the way that they're playing the Ducks this week? Do you feel comfortable because your team has played pretty strong? Or how would you put this matchup on a scale of 1 to 10? 1 being you feel completely comfortable, and 10 you are absolutely just worried.
Let's say 7. Let's put it about 7. I'm not super worried where I would put it at 10, but I'm definitely not comfortable. I mean, he's played awesome against Jared this week, but I also have a little bit. I mean, I do have a little bit of confidence as well because I have beat him 3 times this season. Don't get me wrong. I would like to see it happen a 4th time, but this is going to be by far the hardest matchup that we've had. This 4th one.
That's true.
I mean, I don't remember the exact scores from the first 3, but they were pretty close each time if I remember right. But I'm gonna pick me to win it. I think my Knights are gonna be just too much for him, and I don't know what the start difference is because it's just too early, and it should be pretty close. I know I have 76 starts if everything goes the way I planned it to, because I went ahead and set my lineup for the week. So hopefully he'll have like 5 or 6 less to give me a better chance. So I do, but I feel like I have the better team. I really truly do. And I feel like that's going to prevail.
I think you've got the more consistent team for sure. I mean, over the season, you've scored more by about 120, 130. You've got the more consistent team. I think you guys both have the same ceiling, so I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a 310 to 305 or 279 to 282 type of game next week between you two. And it's really hard to pick a matchup or pick a winner in this matchup because of the fact that obviously you've won the first 3 matchups against him, but I mean it's really tough to beat a team consistently every single matchup in a year. It would be an impressive 4-game sweep to say the least if you're able to do it. So I'm going to defer to my partner here. Who do you think wins, the Vegas Golden Knights or the Nashville Predators in round 1?
The Golden Knights.
Oh, you think Chris is going to win?
I agree.
So we've got a bandwagoner on your side there, Chris. We've got somebody
I'm glad
that's
to
in
hear
your...
it. I agree.
He's in your camp, so... And then obviously, depending on who wins, if the Avalanche win like we think, they will face either myself or Jared, depending on how that game goes. And so you guys will, obviously, it's not an easy road to the championship for anyone this year. Honestly, between the top 4 seeds, we all have I'd say pretty equal chance.
Yeah.
I think your Golden Knights are a little bit behind, but for the most part, everyone has a good chance to win the championship in the top 4 at least.
I'm gonna have the toughest because I'm facing Kevin, and that's obviously a tougher matchup than the Avalanche facing the Wild. Like I said, I mean, it's a virtual win for Keith. I mean, next week, so it's almost like having a bye in a way. I mean, of course, his team could play poor, and the Wild could play great, and the Wilds pull off of this one of the most shocking upsets that we've seen in the playoff, in the Hall of Fame playoffs. But I don't think that's gonna happen. And if it did, it would be, yeah. I was gonna say I think if it did, you'd have to agree with me that it'd be the most shocking playoff upset.
Oh, it absolutely would. I mean, if Keith somehow lost in round 1 to the Wild of all teams, not that Mac doesn't know hockey, it's the fact that I think he's a little overconfident at times. The fact that he feels like, and I get it, you have good players that in real life they're great, but they just don't produce for fantasy, and that kind of sucks. So it's that thing of they should be better for fantasy, but they're just great overall real life players. So I mean, shit can happen anytime, so I would not be surprised completely. It would just be it'd be very, very shocking if the Wild did win, considering how great the Avalanche have played all year.
Absolutely, yeah.
So why don't we move on over to the hardwood, where I felt like the playoffs were closer than they were. Once again, I'm so excited for baseball to start, and I think this actually times out really well because I believe the NBA season will be just finishing the same week the baseball playoff or baseball regular season starts. So we've got 2 weeks left for basketball, and the standings are as such right now. We have the Raptors at 1, Nuggets at, well, this is by pure record, Nuggets at 2, Mavericks at 3, the Hawks at 4, Knicks at 5, Lakers at 6, Timberwolves at 7, the Pelicans at 8, and we have the 2 eliminated teams from the playoff picture with the Chicago Bulls and Phoenix Suns. And, I mean, there's not too much surprise there. I think the biggest surprise between these 2 teams is the fact that the Phoenix Suns actually do have their first-round pick for basketball this year this time.
For now.
When they are a terrible team. Because last year, even though they were the Charlotte Hornets, they were terrible and they were not able to actually use that number 2 pick it ended up being for Ja Morant. So this time they can take advantage of a tanked season for them.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. I
It's
don't,
a good point.
I don't put anything past Sean trading that pick to somebody else for baseball stuff.
That's a really good point. So the current playoff picture, obviously Bulls and Suns are out. But why don't we start from the back of it? Because this is where the most interesting part of it is at. So currently the Lakers sit at number 6, but we have the Timberwolves at 7 and the Pelicans at 8. We've got a playoff run. We've got a playoff chase here. And we'll start with the Pelicans. I want to talk about them first because of what you found. They're 9 wins behind at this point, but their final 2 matchups are the Denver Nuggets and Keith, and the Toronto Raptors and Jared. He literally has to face the top 2 teams in the league. Regardless of my Mavericks being at second spot, that's only because of division, and I fully admit that. But he's going to have to face the 2 toughest teams in the league. Do you think there's any chance that the Pelicans make the playoffs?
Sure, if the Nuggets and Raptors fall off the face of the earth, I mean, it's possible if they, or if Jared and Keith just don't set their lineups or put every single person on the bench. But realistically, no, there's really no chance.
They're in the picture, but that's more of a theoretical kind of picture at this point.
Because not only would they have to win, they're going to have to win big. I mean, they're going to have to win 8 categories to 1 each week. And then, actually, because I have this week in the results already, honestly, they'd have to win one they'd have to win 9-0. The second, they'd have to win 8-1. And then they'd have to hope the Knicks and Lakers fall off the face of the earth as well.
That's a good point. I mean, they're still behind, but it's, once again, a very long shot. And then the same kind of goes with the Timberwolves.
To a lesser degree.
As they're 8 wins back, but they have to face the Toronto Raptors and the Chicago Bulls. Chicago Bulls, they could take advantage of and use that to their to possibly jump up to 6, but that Toronto matchup is going to kill them. So I think whatever ground they could gain in Week 21 against Chicago is just going to be the hole they're trying to dig out of in the very next week that we play next week. So
yeah,
I mean, do you feel the same way?
Yeah. I know that. I don't think the Timberwolves have a much better chance. I mean, you could say that. Let's just put it in percentage form. The Pelicans might have a 2% chance, and the Timberwolves might have a 5% chance of making it. That's just where I'm at this point with them. But just because, and then you have to look at the Lakers matchups. The final 2 matchups, they face the Suns and the Knicks. The Suns suck. The Suns they'll probably beat them 7 categories to 2, and then the Knicks. Who knows if, for one, if Vic's gonna set his lineup, and then secondly, they're kind of injured right now, so I just don't see either one of those happening.
I
don't know.
I completely understand that, and I agree with it. The fact that the schedule has played itself the way it has, I probably wouldn't even give the Pelicans a 2% chance. I'd probably sit at like 0.5%.
Maybe
They need so much to go right and so much to go wrong for their opponents for it to happen. And then the Timberwolves, I'd probably put around that 5% chance.
Yeah, I mean,
because
it's a little more.
Yeah, like you said, the Lakers have some easy matchups, and I think I'm actually pulling up the Knicks as we talk here. It looks like I think Vic has been much better at setting his lineup. I know he's had craziness in his life, but I think because Sean has been back, I feel like that's probably given him a little bit of an extra push to set his lineup more often.
Sure.
So, but obviously Lakers with the Suns and the Knicks in the last 2 weeks gives them a good advantage. But if you were to put in, like you said, you put in their the results as is right now, the Lakers would be at 80 wins and the Knicks at 90. It's tough for me to believe that the Lakers would even be able to jump higher than 6. I don't think that's a chance. What do you think, Charles? Do you think the Lakers can jump up to the number 5 seed or no? You got to use your voice. This is a podcast, yeah? They've got a chance. It's a long shot, but especially with that last week against the Knicks, they might be able to do it. What about you, Chris?
I think, let's put it this way. There's a better chance of that happening than the Pelicans or Timberwolves making the playoffs. That's
not a bold take at all, though.
But that's for sure. But I don't think there's a much better chance of that happening either. I just don't see it. I know the Knicks are kind of injured right now, but the Knicks are leading by 10 games. So I just don't see it. Let me see exactly who they play: Bulls and Lakers, and then I don't know. It would take a lot. The Lakers would have to get a major win.
Yeah, the Lakers would have to have a major win that last week, and they would need the Knicks to be very mediocre here in Week 20. So I think 6 and 5 are pretty set. And looking at 4 and 3, obviously the last two of the wild cards, I guess you could call them, your Hawks at 91 wins and the Nuggets at 109. I feel like those are pretty set as well, but obviously your Hawks in the last 2 weeks will play the Mavericks and the Suns, so you and I go off at it this next week. And it could be for the division. It's a very good chance, obviously, if you were to, say, dominate next week, you're only 13 wins behind if everything sits as is. So if you have a big week of 8 wins against me, and especially taking on the Suns in the final week, you could make a big jump, and especially since I'm playing you and the Nuggets, that week 21 is going to make a big difference for the Jordan division.
Well, and then right now, I also apparently took another. I'm up 8-1, and when I updated that, I put me as 7-2. So that one game will make a little bit of a difference, and in this case, I'd be 12 games behind you, approximately.
Right.
Games. I would basically have to win 7-2 each week, and then you'd have to lose to the Nuggets 7-2, which I don't think that's impossible. But it's obviously unlikely. So I think there's a better chance of me catching the 2 seed than the 3 seed.
Well, yeah, obviously it's going to be very hard to catch the Nuggets for the number 3 seed as the top play or wild card team, but that division is not sealed up for me yet, and I'm a little nervous about it. But I'm really excited because this next week is going to matter so much, and I think I don't know. I'll have to look at this, but I think I might be the first of all of us to win their division in a full single year. I would have to look, because I know obviously with Keith losing in hockey, Jared had his division in football and hockey, but he didn't have it in baseball. So I'd actually be really curious to see if anyone so far from the beginning of 2019 to the end of 2019 won all 4 divisions.
I don't think so, other than you. I think...
Well, I'll have to update that, and I'll put that in the notes later.
If you won baseball, then you've won all the divisions. I don't know about baseball. But you were first, I believe, in baseball overall.
I was first in baseball overall last year.
Then you won all your divisions. Because you won football, you're about to win basketball, more than likely, and then you won hockey.
I'd have to look. I consider it a different season, though, because, like I said, I consider it as 2020, but then again, we started in 2019, so it all depends on how you look at it.
You're saying 2019. Oh, that's a different story.
Yeah. So.
But I think
obviously,
he might have won them all.
So we'll have to look into that. But the Nuggets, I don't think really have a chance of catching the Raptors. They're 20 games behind at this point, and the Raptors get to face the Timberwolves and the Pelicans. I feel like that number 1 seed is clearly sealed up for them. There's no question about that.
No.
But I mean, if one quick question before we kind of get out of here, obviously the Suns and Bulls being eliminated is a big thing. But if it wasn't the Raptors to win the championship this year, who do you think would be the best chance to do it? Say Jared disappeared for, I don't know, say 3 weeks. Not that I'm kidnapping him or anything, but outside of the theoretical favorite, who would have the best chance? To me, it's probably the Nuggets. They're the best all-around team. But I feel like, obviously, if we eliminated the Raptors, it's a much closer race.
Yeah, no doubtably. That's tough because I think it's pretty tight between myself, you, and Keith. I think Keith would be the obvious favorite because he does really well with the ratios, with the field goal percentage and the free throw percentage. Normally, at least in per matchup, maybe not overall, but he seems to win a lot of the ratios. But the counting stats, I think that's tough. That's tough. I think that would be a very, very competitive turnout. I think I would favor Keith, but I would put your Mavericks as the next team.
Yeah, I'd agree with that because I'm actually looking through all of them. Obviously the Denver is a great team. The only thing that they are not top 3 in when it comes to the counting stats is 3-pointers, and they come in at 4th. So they're obviously very competitive in it, but when it comes to rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks, they are top 1 or 2 throughout all of them. So they're not lacking in talent. They are obviously right up there, and just like that, half a tier below Toronto. So Keith is such a good team, and if he's able to find that difference maker next year, he might be able to overthrow Jared, which I'm sure he would absolutely love to do.
Yeah, I would. I don't know if I would go that far yet, but he definitely would make it a very competitive. I honestly think if those two match up this year, I think it's going to be competitive anyway, because I would give Keith the field goal percentage, the free throw percentage. I would give him turnovers just because Jared scores so many points that his team turns the ball over a lot. That's not the exact reason, but that's the way I'm going to put it here, just to make it quick. And then that's 3 categories right there. If he can pick up assist, and then you got the 1 stat difference. So I think it's going to be competitive this year if those two make it.
I feel like it's going to be closer than it was last year for sure. Obviously, the Toronto Raptors are dealing with many, many more injuries than they were last year, especially to some key guys. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But I do have one final question for our other guest. Between my Mavericks and Chris's Hawks, who do you think is going to win the Michael Jordan division?
My dad.
High five. All right. Well, I'm glad you were able to jump on with us tonight. I know you were looking forward to it. So why don't you go run off and go brush your teeth and get ready for bed, okay?
Can I say bye?
Yeah, you can say bye.
Bye.
All right, go get ready for bed and get ready for school. Later. So, but that's all we've really got for tonight. We only have 2 more MLB team previews left to do, and that would be Kevin and Keith. Did I put mine out earlier today? I really don't remember.
You did.
I think
You did.
Okay, yeah, I put that out. So we only have 2 more left, and we have 3 weeks before, or 18 days before the season starts. So I can't wait to get those done. I'm really looking forward to Keith's. If you've got any final thoughts, go ahead, Chris. But I think I'm pretty done on everything that we have wrapping up for the winter sports.
No, I'm pretty much good to go. I'm excited to see how this. I'm so excited to see how this Predators-Ducks matchup finishes out tonight, and see what's going on in the morning. Who's got the number 1 seed in hockey? But other than that, I'm good to go.
And right now, one last final update, it is 312 to 301.8 in favor of the Predators. So I might just stay up a little bit extra late just to see what happens, but it's definitely going to be an interesting start to the NHL playoffs. So
definitely.
I'm glad you could join me. I'm glad we could do this again, and I am so ready for hockey playoffs. It is the best time. So I will talk to you later, Chris. Have a good night.